Hey everyone, it's Dale Blassingame. I'm a senior lecturer here in the School of Journalism and Mass Communication at Texas State, and really excited to be a part of this module on social media and analytics. So over the next couple of minutes, I'm going to be walking you through how I teach analytics to students, hopefully provide a little comfort to you in terms of what is needed to bring these topics to the students and make them as accessible as possible to the students. When I discuss with colleagues or with other professors about teaching social media analytics, I always push more toward the really, really simple way of doing so, not only for a beginner standpoint in terms of teaching this stuff, because it can get confusing and overwhelming, but it also helps the students understand not only the importance of them, but then it helps them talk about these analytics in a more confident way where they know what they're doing. So when we discuss analytics, of course, there are platforms like Sprout Social or Raven Tools or, hundreds and hundreds of others that do this for you. But the problem with those is they cost a lot of money. And, students don't have that. I'm sure universities don't have that in order to pay for these. And a lot of businesses can't afford these, or a lot of smaller marketing agencies or PR agencies can't afford these tools. So I think it's really important to teach students how to do these by hand. And so I use Canva in order for them to build their analytics reports, and you'll see some of those here in just a minute. When you start, it's all about focus, and I focus on two things. One, as I mentioned, simplicity, and the other is context, and I will show those to you here in just a second. For the past couple of semesters, my class has been working with Say What, which is a anti-tobacco group that encourages young people to make smart choices when it comes to tobacco-free lifestyles. So saying that, we create content for them all semester for both Facebook and Instagram, which are their main platforms. And in turn, we get a look behind the scenes. We get a look at their insights and their analytics. And so when we talk about simplicity, here's the type of things that I have the students look for right away. One, there are just some benchmark things that we keep track of all semester. Number of fans, number of times they're posting. So can we look at those two things? Really simple. Those are just counting or observing. Then I have them look at reactions, comments, and shares and average those numbers out over the past 28 days. So really, really simple stuff here. Just 5 or 6 things that we're looking for. I usually add a few things to that. And then we just dig into the analytics. And so, for instance, here's one post where, if you can follow my mouse here, you can see here we have 9 reactions total, 2 shares, 0 comments. So those would be the numbers we mark down. And then we just go through the list. It's a little time consuming at first, but the students really pick it up after too long. One important note of why I don't just count the reactions, comments, and shares from either the post page on Insights or on the Facebook page itself. This gives you information on shares. So right now you can see we didn't get any engagements on shares. But let's say I shared this particular post and then it got 10 reactions on that. It would include those numbers as well. And so I want the true gauge of how well this content did across all the different people who shared it or who posted this type of content. So here are just a couple of examples of some of the things the students came up with on their first try. Again, you can see here, there are those benchmark things: likes, posts, average reactions, comments, and shares. You can see 2 other things I asked them for were demographic information. So who is the audience? Is it 18 to, you can see 18 to 24 was by far the biggest audience, which that's helpful because we're dealing with young people in terms of the demo of this page. And then I wanted to know where they were from. This program only deals with Texas, so if we had cities outside of Texas, that would concern me. But you can see here the top 5 cities were all there in Texas. Here's another one that I thought was pretty good in terms of layout and design. Again, really simple, clean, easy to read, easy to understand. Above all else, I think that is the key when you're discussing these analytics, especially moving forward with a client or trying to explain them to a client, because chances are the client's not going to know this stuff. They're not going to know what these numbers mean. So keeping it as simple as possible and as clean as possible on the page is really important. And then context comes into play as you move on and you progress through the semester with these. So you can see I still look at the number of fans and number of posts. Then I add in stuff like when are the fans online and why, top performing post, which you'll see some examples of here. And then we start doing the percentage differences of those reactions, comments, and shares. And the question I always ask is why? Why was that the top performing post? What do those numbers mean in terms of differences? So keep that in mind, and I know we all know how to do differences, but I just remind students really quickly what that percentage is. So for instance, you can get that number and you can say, oh, there was a 22% increase in terms of those numbers. So just basic, really simple math in determining differences. So here, for example, is one post that did really well. So it wasn't enough for the students to say this was the top performing post. Give me a little details of why. So it could be as simple as, well, this got the most reactions, or this got the highest reach, or this got the most shares, or a ton of people clicked on the video or on the photo that came from it. Any of those would count as context as to why the student thought this was the highest performing post. So there might be different answers based on whatever criteria the students are using for top performing post. So here was one of the second analytics reports. You can see they had the best performing post. They gave a little bit of reason why, and this was a promoted post on Facebook, so they included that there. And then they had the percentages. So you can see we dropped on a couple of those numbers. And then it becomes time for the students to find the context of why that happened. Why do you think we dropped almost 100% on our comments? There was a really simple answer that came from that. One was because the client did a contest the previous month where it asked people to comment in order to be part of the contest. So when you do that, you're obviously going to have a drop the next month when you're not trying to have people do that. So anytime you see those numbers crash through the floor, it's time to dig into the analytics and start using common sense and logic to figure out why that happened. We also track their Instagram account, so I have admin rights for that. And we look at things like reach, which there's a difference between impressions and reach. Impressions are the total number of views. Reach are the total number of unique views. So I would rather have those reach numbers for that. And then we look at engagement, which on Instagram, engagement could mean a comment, could mean, hearting the post, stuff like that. So we then do really, really simple and basic Instagram analytics reports. So you can see here, there's not a lot on there. I didn't ask for a ton, but this would be one example of their Instagram analytics reports. A couple of things I've heard from students as we've gone through this whole 3-year journey of this class I created. This was Emmanuel Ron, who was in my class last semester, who just started a job at a new business, and he said I have to do monthly analytics reports on Facebook and Twitter. And that was really cool because I knew what to do. They were really impressed. So right off the bat, like, he didn't have to have anybody teach him how to do this because of what he had learned in the class. And this is the one that I love sharing. This is Alexandria. She was in the very first class we taught of this. And she was applying for a job at a big PR firm. She said it came down to her and 2 other candidates, and they chose her because she could build analytics reports. They literally walked in and gave them some analytics and said, build us a report by hand. And she was the only one who knew how to build a report by hand. Again, I keep things as simple as possible when it comes to teaching analytics and talking analytics with students. That way they feel comfortable, whether it's in interviews or working with clients or working with their own, colleagues or coworkers, of being able to explain it and know what that means and why it's important. I make all my resources available on the web. So if you go to my website, click on the analytics tab, there you can see the syllabus, the class schedule, you can see the projects we do, and I have a ton of tutorial videos there as well. So just want you to start thinking about ways to bring in analytics and social media into the classroom. It all comes back to strategy. So these numbers are meaningless unless you have a strategy that goes along with it. And again, that's why I like keeping things simple so that the students can then be confident in terms of the strategy moving forward based off of what they're seeing with the data.